Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We are PVD Horror. I am Dave. I'm here with my co-host, Brandon, and we have a very special guest today. Today, we are joined with Keith McCurdy of Voodoo Sister. Keith, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about what Voodoo Sister is?
Voodoo Sister is an ensemble that I started in 2011. After having been in so many bands, I kind of started as not necessarily a solo thing or solo project, but it was something that I needed to be self-sufficient with, where I could always have or try to put together a band. And, so far it's been mostly consistent with the people I've played with over the years, put out several albums and all very different albums, but
Yes. Who is your current lineup, if you want to give them a shout out?
um, first and foremost, Diane O'Connor, my violin player. We've been playing together for 12 years since its inception, or 13 years.
Wow.
And we just started. I'm very excited to mention that we just started working with a cellist, Isabel Castelvi, who's somewhat new to Providence. She's been here for maybe 2 years. Fantastic player, and we've been writing together. And I do collaborate with my good friend Alexander Garzone, who has his own project called Divey. He's freaking collaborative. We've actually done a couple records together.
Cool. So this episode kind of got inspired by an event that you have coming up called Stragalia. And
Yes.
that is on May 26th at Askew in Providence. And I thought that maybe you could give our listeners just kind of like an overview of what that event's going to be like and what's the vibe and how do they get tickets for it?
So, okay, you can get them at first of all, you can get the tickets at Eventbrite via SQ's website and our Facebook event page. So Stragalia it's play on the word strega, which is Italian witchcraft, Sicilian witchcraft, which has a little to do with my own heritage, and also like Roman festivals like Lupercalia or Saturnalia. So the idea is that we would put together different music and sort of arts and vendors and sort of a variety show, and just revolving around dark folk, dark arts, dark music, dark freak stuff, witchy stuff, and things people who love Halloween and horror stuff like we do.
Yes.
To kind of throw it all together. And this will be our first one, so hopefully it'll be successful so we can do more of them and have different artists and vendors in the future.
So as of right now, we got Voodoo Sister and a few other bands, right?
Yeah, Savoir Faire is an artist. She's like a dark. I guess she's described as noir, which I think is perfect. She's a fantastic guitar player. She's from Boston. And then there's Jake Watson, MD, who's kind of like a freak folk. Someone said he was described as blues for the apocalypse. So he's an interesting character. And then a good friend of mine, Stephanie Carey, who goes by Maiden X, is doing a little bit of burlesque dancing. So those are the performers. Then we have a jeweler that's doing sort of like dark crystal inspired jewelry and creations, like a lot of botanical and geological stuff. And we have Providence Horror, of course. And what am I missing? We have a friend of mine is doing some tarot readings and selling handmade candles.
Awesome. So as you mentioned, we're going to be setting up a booth for this event, but in all honesty, I'm just pretty psyched to be able to be there and take in all the music and everything like that. This is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I loved what they did at what you guys do at Buttonwoods Brewery, because we've been playing there for a while now, and that event that we had where you guys had a booth, and I think like that's a pretty good demonstration of what we're trying to go for, only with a stage.
Okay.
Which is, so it's a little more performance oriented, but I wanted a mix of both vendors. And
I'll tell you, when I was at the booth the whole time, I was like, when you were playing, I just was like staring down. I was in a trance, and it was perfect for what they were going for that event. And I mean, in that brewery, I mean, it's a brewery, but like, it's so funny. That space is just like so good for everything. Like we do our movies there, and the space is great for that. But you sounded amazing in that space as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to this.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I want to link up more, because we played Necronomicon last year, and I'd been wanting to do that for years, and finally Neil's actually approached us. I'm if you're familiar with Necronomicon and the Lovecraft Arts and Science Council. And the reason why it was important to me too is because what we do thematically with our music is very much in sync with what I feel is in sync with like the horror community, the Lovecraft community, a lot of like the metal community. It's like the things we sing about and the subjects and the modalities I use. It's it's acoustic, but it's very dark. It's very macabre. Like we're really not suitable for kids or like the Kumbaya crowd. I call them the Kumbaya crowd. Yeah, whatever. I mean, we have songs about grave robbers and ghosts and violence and just, nasty stuff. Like one of our albums was based on the Scary Stories books.
Okay.
With our own spin on it.
Yeah. Yeah, kids. So if you're listening to this episode, wait a few years and then check out the albums, so it's not soon for you now.
I mean, I don't swear, but if you really listen to what I'm singing, it's not appropriate for children.
So Keith, it was nice to meet you at our screening of The Thing. So what type of horror films are you into?
I knew you were going to ask this. I know you know my friend Jeff Angel. Big shout out to Deadbeats, the new bar he's opening. But no, because he's a big horror buff, and him and Brandon and I hang out a lot. And so The Thing is actually one of my top 5 horror films.
Okay.
I'm pressed to say, like, if I have a top 5, I want to say like some classics. I mean, I do love Night of the Living Dead. I think it still holds up. But honestly, I think horror has been, I don't know what you guys think, but I think horror has been amazing in the last 10 years. I think there's been like, I know it gets said like there's a horror renaissance, and I'm sure people are very eager to pick on the A24 phenomenon because it's been going on for a while now. So it's probably cool to hate them. But I honestly think they've done a great job revitalizing them.
I can guarantee you, I already know at least 2 horror films that you probably love based on your music and just what you just said. Even before you said A24, I knew you were going to say, I had a feeling you were going to say Hereditary and Midsommar.
Hereditary and The Witch. The Witch was the first one The Witch one.
There you go.
The Robert Eggers, that film was the first one that I'd seen that was like, oh wow, this was cool, because I mean, horror, there's some pretty bad ones in the 2000s and the early 2010s. I don't know when that came out, actually, now, but that was the first one of the kind of this wave of new horror. What do they call it? Elevated horror. A horror that requires a few more brain cells than
I hate that people use that title on it, because it's getting used in like this, like we're arrogant for liking movies that make us think a little bit more. But
it's like well, because you know what the other thing is, it's in, and some of them are fun, but it's like we've been just so inundated with like the superhero stuff. So it's like horror has been one of the only genres, or one of the few genres lately where there's films that have been made that, yes, they're scary, but they all have something interesting to say. And it's not just brainless nonsense. But I did like I actually really love It Follows. That's one of my favorites of the new. It's like if you explain it to somebody, it sounds idiotic. You can't explain to someone what It Follows is about. You just have to watch it, and they capture what it feels like to be in a nightmare so well. It's like this nightmare logic, and I thought that one was very impressive. But I do love Hereditary.
So like, just like you, It Follows is like one of my favorite films. Have you seen Smile yet?
Yes.
There you go.
And again, another one that you see the trailer, you read the synopsis about it, and you're just like, this can't be good. I watched it and I was like, yeah, that was actually, it gave me the same kind of feeling that It Follows sort of evokes. It's a similar kind of nightmare logic. It's unrelenting. It's but there's been some really good ones. I saw The Void. That was excellent. So I really like the Lovecraftian stuff. I really love cosmic horror. Obviously I like folk horror and anything that deals with witchcraft, demons, and the occult. It's like, because it genuinely scares me. Like there was really good one, A Dark Song. I think it was a British film. That was excellent. So I mean, I like different genres of horror. I don't really go for the torture porn stuff from the 2000s. That wasn't really my favorite stuff. But I used to really like the zombie genre, but has to be
Play out.
handled.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets saturated. And
Yeah.
I haven't heard anyone use the phrase torture porn in so long, but I used to love that genre for a while, and it kind of got like, it kind of was like the zombie thing. It got like overdone, and kind of like just lost its effect. But
did you guys? How did you guys feel about Barbarian?
Was
it surprising at all?
It was, because like when it first started, like just the spins to it, you know what I mean? And then the film just stops, and then it just. Did you watch it yet? I don't want to.
Me? Oh, I watched it.
Okay. Yeah.
So I wanted to say that I had no knowledge about anything going into it.
Yeah.
And it's got a certain tone to it in the first act.
Mm-hmm.
And then it switches gears several times. And I know some people, some friends of mine, they didn't like how it ended it. But I'm like, honestly, what a ride.
It was.
The first act was so suspenseful.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of a haunted house film in a way. I love haunted house movies.
Yeah.
I had a similar feeling. Like, just I did no reading on it at all when I walked. So when I walked into it, I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen. I didn't know that it was going to switch the tone or anything. And like you said, it's like a wild ride to go on. I enjoyed it.
I watched that, and then I watched The Invitation from 2016 immediately. There's several invitations, not the vampire one.
Yeah, the other one where it's like
the one with the
Gathering.
death cult. Yeah. Wow.
That's a cool one.
Wow, man. That was amazing. And it was such a satisfying ending.
Yes. Yeah, that was a very cool one. That's another one
that one it takes you by surprise.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute, what the hell is going on here? When John Carroll Lynch tells his story about what happened with him and his wife, at first what he tells the fellow party goers, it's just like, wow, that was really messed up. And I'm glad like the main character is sort of like the audience member. It's like, did you guys just hear what he said? I mean, I don't want to give anything away because
no, it's definitely one people should check out.
Yeah, definitely.
That was really good. Most of these are honestly like, you guys know Jeff, our mutual friend, Jeff Angel. He's usually the one who recommends these really deep cut ones that I wouldn't have heard about.
Yeah,
otherwise. So
Jeff has a nice VHS collection. He was trying to get rid of.
He does. Yeah, I'm ashamed to admit this, but because I love John Carpenter.
Yeah,
I had never seen They Live until recently. And I don't know how that happened, but
and when you watched it, were you like, "What have I been missing this for this?"
I got a lot of the references because I've seen clips, I've seen I know I came here to chew bubble gum and kick ass, I get all that, but like, and obviously the viral marketing of it, but yeah, that was I don't know how I missed that one. But to go back to your screening that I actually made, The Thing is one of my top favorite films, not just horror films, but it's like one of those films too. When I'd first seen it years and years ago, it was like one of those horror films that was genuinely scary. And most of it was because of the human element of the sort of claustrophobia and the mistrust of everybody. And so that's one of my favorites.
So now every horror fan has a crazy story to tell about their first experience with horror. Can you share yours?
Oh, Well, we had a black box when I was a kid, and if you're a child of the 80s, you know what I'm talking about. So, and I had a pretty cool Gen X father who was a musician, and he really let us watch whatever we wanted. And I saw I think I saw I got a good one. When I first saw Child's Play, it was probably on HBO or something, and I don't even know if it was the first one. We had a My Buddy doll, and then I saw Child's Play as a very young kid. This is kind of a messed up story, but when I saw that, I took my buddy doll, the My Buddy doll we had. I took him outside, and we had a little kiddie pool, and I held the doll's head underwater for as long as I felt was necessary to drown the doll. And I just rip its head off or like throw it in the trash. I drowned this doll because it was evil. I knew it was evil. But it was just looking back, I realized how kind of disturbing that method of execution kind of was for a little child. And
You wanted to make sure he wasn't going to come to life.
I just want to make sure that dog was dead. Yeah, honestly, I could actually really go into horror comedy because like some of my favorite horror films are horror comedy films, like Nothing But Trouble, which is highly underrated. But one of my favorite movies of all time, speaking of like coming back from New York City, is Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And I didn't know Ghostbusters was a comedy until I was an adult. My brother and I took those films seriously. But yeah, actually, those are definitely up there if we can count horror
Nothing
comedy.
But Trouble with John Candy and Demi Moore and Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
I got to rewatch that. I watched.
When's the last time you guys watched Nothing But Trouble?
In
when it first
like
came
the
out.
early 90s.
Yeah.
It's you guys should have a screening of that. I don't know who will come, but
I gotta run it back because I remember there was a video for it. MC Hammer had a song for that album.
Yes.
Soundtrack, and I was just like, oh, yeah. I gotta run that movie back again.
Great John Candy movie, Chevy Chase, great Dan Aykroyd as the judge.
Dan Aykroyd, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, that's
a throwback right there. Good call. We're both I gotta watch that again.
My father was a big fan of the Evil Dead series, so that was regular watching. Evil Dead 2, I always remember the cover with the skull face, and then Army of Darkness was like, that's the best one. I mean, I know everybody likes the second one, but Army of Darkness is awesome.
I just did a post today asking people, like, out of the 4 Evil Dead films, the 4th being the remake, well, if you could keep one, well, which one would it be? And it's a pretty like wide variety of answers. Surprisingly, I thought everybody was going to say like Part 2 or Army of
that would be hands down for me. Would be the third one, Army of Darkness. But I gotta say, and I get some hate for this, but I really like the remake.
Oh, the remake was good. Yeah,
I think the remake is exactly because people forget that the first one isn't funny.
Yeah.
At all. There's no humor in it. It's funny because it's so low budget, but it's actually pretty terrifying. I mean, it's just so low budget that your suspension of disbelief is it's not there as much. But the remake, I think, does a good job of making an unrelentingly terrifying film that's just gory. It just pushes it to the limit. And it's a remake, so it's a beloved franchise, so people are gonna be like ready to hate it anyways. But I liked it actually. I probably will see the new one. I don't know how it will be, but
well, you're not alone. We love the remake, and I place the remake as probably as one of the best horror remakes ever made. So
yeah, I liked as far as remakes, I liked that one a lot, and I actually liked the Dawn of the Dead remake from the early 2000s.
Yeah. No, I definitely enjoyed that.
I kind of always forget about that one because I haven't seen it probably since it came out, but I actually enjoyed. I mean, fast zombies were pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now, back in December, you were able to celebrate your album, Bastard Children's 10th anniversary. How has your perspective changed since first releasing it?
Well, that's a lot of things have changed. I don't really, I've kind of really moved away from the whole like Southern Gothic thing, which, we playlisted a while back on a Southern Gothic playlist, and there's like maybe 2 songs on there that really explore that realm. Just because I don't come from there. So it's just like, this is really authentic to me. I mean, I liked some of that stuff, and, I kind of moved away from a lot of that since. And, obviously, as an artist, you learn, you grow, you make a lot of mistakes, continue to make mistakes. But, I don't think I don't feel like I really felt like, I don't think I really found what I consider to be our sound until our 3rd album, Mortis Nervosa. But it was exciting to revisit that. It wasn't actually my idea to remaster and remix it. I wanted to do something, but my friend Michael Samos was the one who plays on the record, who came up with the idea of like taking a shot at remixing and remastering the tracks for like 10th anniversary. Yeah. So that was cool. It was a lot of fun and gave it some more life and reflection, I guess. Yeah. But so now we're working on a 5th album, so I'm mostly excited about that. Awesome. But you said you liked Burnt Offerings.
I have a question about Burnt Offerings, about like just the whole inspiration and stuff behind
Yeah.
it. So yeah, we can get right into that question right now. So what inspired you to release that EP with like Latin and Greek languages?
Well, I went back to college sometime in 2015 or 2016 after Mortis Nervosa was released, and I studied classics. So when I started studying Latin, and I have to say this because apparently some people don't realize when you say classics, we mean the study of ancient Greece and Rome, the cultures, languages, and literature. Anyways, so when I started studying Latin and Greek, it was immediately apparent to me that I wanted to write songs in these languages. It's like, you know, I'm going to school, learning these things, ancient languages, and the first thing I think of is I'm going to write some songs.
Yeah.
But, classical literature and mythology is loaded with some pretty dark stuff. And the subject matter is, it's from the feminine perspective. All the songs I'm singing as tragic heroines or goddesses from classical myth. But they're all pretty dark stories. Like Clytemnestra is about her murdering her husband. So, but I've always loved mythology, and I've always loved fairy tales and folklore growing up. So, and I mean, I was a big Tolkien buff. So it was kind of natural for me to gravitate towards that realm.
Okay.
It's pretty amazing hearing you sing in like it sounds so like natural.
Yeah.
Hearing you on that album,
Thank you.
Burnt Offerings. It's like, holy shit! Like this, like I don't know how you did that. To be honest with you,
I love language, and I didn't really study it. Like, I grew up in a household where my mom spoke French. She never taught me, but like, I think it was from all the Tolkien stuff that I really loved, and linguistics. And I think it's if you're like someone who does music, I feel like it comes a little more naturally because there is a musicality to language. And for me, it was like I wasn't going to try to recreate ancient music. I needed to do something that was still consistent with my own style. But for that, I was listening to a lot of like Sicilian folk music and Greek rebettico, and just to like, what kind of melodies can I use to make these ancient languages not sound kind of goofy in a modern sense? Because I feel like, I don't know, you couldn't do like 12-bar blues, for example. But, I'm not a musicologist, so I wasn't going to try to, get out lyres and stuff. Well, that would be cool too. But I wanted to make sure the songs were still elegant and tasteful, and that the melodies were still good and listenable, even if you don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, and that's what grabbed me. It was like, just the way that I just was impressed knowing that like you're someone from Rhode Island, that, you have, you speak like us, but yet you can create a song and make it sound like, I have no idea what you're singing, but it sounds like you're singing something that would make sense to whoever speaks that language. So it's like, it was really impressive. Again, I'll just say it again. It's someone who's tried to dabble in learning other languages, and I know how hard it is. Just to hear that is crazy.
Yeah, especially ancient languages. They're very, very grammar intensive. Like, you can't really get around. I actually happen to love grammar, but you can't really get around learning them without understanding the grammar, which can be very complex. But
which is why it's so hard to translate songs. Sometimes they don't always make sense. Yeah.
Oh yes, very much. I mean, some of that was, my approach to songwriting was I spent a year writing those songs. If I had given myself more time, I might have had more songs, but I consider it's an EP, but I'll call it an album because each song counts as two in my book. Cause it's like, this is a very challenging project.
Yeah.
And I think, the other thing too is I feel like that also kind of intersects with like some of my Lovecraftian side and Poe, because both of those writers were very much interested in archaic things and writing in archaic styles and exploring ancient religions and ancient cults and so forth. We got called Eldritch Folk at the Necronomicon last year. I thought it was like, that's
kind of cool.
I think that's cool. You can't tell everybody you're Eldritch Folk because most people won't know what the hell you're talking about. But I kind of enjoy that label.
Now, how did your fans from the beginning feel about the Burnt Offerings EP? Like, have you gotten good feedback, or like, what's up with that?
People still like my first album.
Yeah.
I'm always getting people coming up to me, or especially online, because I got fans in Italy, and that's why I started to go there, because I developed some relationships with people out there. But it's usually because they heard about there's the song we have, Psalms, from our first album, that's like our biggest one on like Spotify. But I think it's been generally appreciated. I kind of knew going into making Burnt Offerings that it would potentially alienate some people or put people off because they just didn't know what to make of it.
Mhm.
But it's like, here's an album that's really weirdly obscure, or does something very obscure that you're not going to hear. But isn't that kind of fun to me? I mean, it's like, yeah, no one's doing this. So generally people like it. Like I said, I really tried to make sure that at least the song, even if you don't know what I'm saying, as I said earlier, the songs are still strong. I made sure the songwriting was strong, even, as language intensive as it is. But yeah, I mean, it came out during COVID, so I didn't get to have a release show for it. And I really didn't get to it didn't really get its due, I feel. I mean, maybe there's a chance to revisit it at some point, but unfortunately, I never really feel like it landed. But
Yeah.
I'm very proud of the work, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad you like it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
cool
very-
because
it's
I
very-
always like when artists try something different. I mean, it's kind of even like when Lil Wayne went the alternative rock version when he came out with that album. It was something different, and people just respected it because it was like, at least this guy took a chance, try something different in his career. And so
Yeah.
it's just like you were able to sit there and add in to an album on something that you worked on for so long, just learning different language.
Yeah,
That's an accomplishment. And so there's people.
thanks. Yeah, you really, I mean, from an artist perspective, you
Mhm.
really cannot care. I don't know if I can swear on this.
Oh, you
Yeah.
can.
Oh, you really just can't give a fuck what people.
Yeah.
I've been trying to watch. Well, I'm glad I know that now. Now I don't have to watch what I'm saying.
Oh.
You really just can't give a fuck how people are gonna receive something. It's like you just can't. That's poisonous. Anytime I write a song at all, it's like I'm not thinking about how anybody's gonna care or perceive this the piece that I'm working on.
Yeah.
As long as I like it. But one of my favorite recent artists to come out are Rouge Aftab. She's a Pakistani woman who's based out of Brooklyn, and she sings in Farsi and Urdu, and I have no idea what she's saying, and it's gorgeous music. So it's like, really shouldn't matter, but
Yeah.
I think it's like the nerd factor or something. It's like you did something that's very academic. So
Yeah.
but I don't make it sound academic.
I was just thinking too, like, I sometimes, like, I'll call myself like pretentious or like a music snob because I have this love for indie music of all genres, but like I love indie music, and I have this thing where as soon as somebody goes mainstream, I start to not care about them anymore, and or like I lose interest in them as as a musician.
Right.
And I think it's because of what you said. I was just thinking about that. Like, that makes so much sense. I think when people go mainstream, the thought of making the music you want to make or making what your vision is kind of loses. It's like, that's no longer the goal. Now it's all about putting something together that you have to give a fuck about what other people want, right? Because you're making it for a different reason.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm in this for the long haul. So I get the notion of trying to be mindful of unfortunate business aspects of this industry.
Yeah.
But it's just that in the process of sheer creation, I think that's absolutely hazardous. But yeah, I think as much as I might want to say that, people are dumb, people are also smart enough to be able to detect that. People know when you're not being authentic. And
Yep.
I don't think most people are interested in that. Like,
Yeah.
you really want to do what serves your quote unquote fan base, just don't give a fuck and do what you want to do. That's why they like you in the first place.
Exactly. Like I'm all for, if like suddenly, you get the production and you can make the quality sound better, or you get something, make something bigger.
It's like, oh yeah, it's like,
that's cool.
I'll go back to the Evil Dead remake. It's like, I remember watching Bruce Campbell say, like, this is what we would have made if we had money.
Yeah.
So there's that. That's fine. But yeah, I think you can sniff it out when
for sure.
one of your favorite bands starts to think, oh, this is plastic.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
This is good.
So can you tell us, if there is a typical, what a typical Voodoo Sister fan is like?
Man. Um, well, I don't know how to answer that, but I will say this because I said this earlier. And last year, I mean, I already mentioned we played the Necronomicon. I've been wanting to play Necronomicon for a long time because my theory was, you know what? It's when we started out with when I started Voodoo Sister, we'd often get paired with what I'll call like the kumbaya stuff, and like they see an acoustic guitar, they immediately assume it's like folk music, and it's like whatever. And they would pair us with a lot of stuff that I just don't think was really where the types of audience that came to see these shows, they didn't really get it, and they didn't really love what we do, and they might think it's sonically good, but it's not their thing. And I'm always like, I think it's like metal fans and horror people, and like the Necronomicon was like something where we played it, and I'm like, I guarantee you these people will understand it and they'll appreciate what we do. And I was right. It was a very, very successful evening, and man, like I was selling stuff all through the night, and I got people who are coming out from they come from all over the world sometimes to that festival. And those types of people, and like we played the Scurvy Dog parking lot show with a lot of metal bands, and it's these types of people who like get what we do and actually appreciate it. And like I'm always trying to look for opportunities to play in front of those types of audiences, because like the weirdos are the ones that are going to like this stuff.
Yeah.
I hope that answers. I don't know if that answers it directly.
No, but I think essentially what you're kind of getting at is like there's the audience that has an appreciation for darker arts seems to appreciate Voodoo Sister more than
Cultura obscura.
Yeah. If you just went to like a folk festival, yeah, I'm sure there'll be a number of fans. But if it was a dark arts festival, that's probably going to be where you're going to find more fan base.
It's hard to find the bridge, because typically you'll find those types of audiences at like more aggressive, like heavy metal shows, and like I'm friends with the guys there's a metal band Black Sorcery, and like I would love to open for them, but I get that why aesthetically or sonically that might not make sense. But or bands like that. And on the surface, you might see like me play with my violinist Diane, and like, oh, it's violin and acoustic guitar, and some of it's sort of pretty sounding stuff, even if I'm singing about a grave robber falling in love with a corpse. But that's not going to go over well with the more lighthearted.
You played Newport Folk Festival, right?
We did. Yeah. That was 2013.
I mean, that's a pretty cool accomplishment right there.
Yeah.
Thank you. I feel like that has something to do with why we were playlisted on Spotify, but I could be wrong. But yeah, no, that was great. I mean, it was packed in there, and that we played the museum stage, and that was a good time. Then we came and played Foo Fest at AS 20, and it felt a little more at home.
Yeah.
Because it was literally at home. But yeah, I don't, but again, I don't think that's really our crowd either. Like, I would totally play the Newport Folk Festival again, but I don't think it's really. I think we'd be much more at home, like at some kind of metal fest or something. And like, it's funny. I was in New York. I played a show in Manhattan, and then I saw an artist I really like, Emma Ruth Rundle, who is kind of a great example of one of the artists that I've been into lately, who seems to sort of bridge those two worlds of like, a lot of metal fans go to see her, but she plays like dark acoustic, and it's not for the faint of heart, but it's also not like abrasive either. So there's a nice intersection there. Sure. And I feel like that's kind of where we exist.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. So now let's talk about your time. You just talked about home. You said AS220, which is a local Rhode Island treasure for creative people, their vision, space.
I live at AS220.
Huh?
I live at AS220.
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah, the space is like, it's open for creative people to like fulfill their creative or their potential. How has your time as a resident been in that space?
Well, I mean, this isn't even hyperbole. AS220 essentially saved my life. I mean, I've been here for almost 10 years, and I've seen like different administrations sort of come and go. Like When I started living here, it was Bert and Susan who started Ace of 20 in the 80s. I mean, I used to come here when I was a kid with my father up to the performance space, but and then I played there myself since I was in my early 20s. But yeah, it's been a great place for someone like me, because I mean, I'm working hard, but I'm still making a very, very modest living. So it's a great opportunity for working artists who, need the help. And I mean, I love my apartment. It's like I live alone. I have my space to create, and it's a good community. And they're very, very helpful. Like, I hear a lot of horror stories, pun intended. I hear a lot of stories from friends of mine that live in the town with, like, it's got slumlords and stuff like that. And it's just like, it's just nightmare stories. And I'm like, I'm so thankful every day I come home that I live here, because of them and the work that they do. And it's also like all the different, like they have the youth program. They do, obviously they got the performance space, and they have the studios and the industry labs. They do a lot of great work in the city. So I don't think there's a lot of places that don't have an institution like this.
Yeah. I love how it's all inclusive too, because Brandon and I worked together at a kids group home, and we would try and get our some of the kids who were, interested in music and other art projects like involved there, and they were always like very open to allowing that.
They do a lot of good work in the youth program.
Yeah. I got one of the kids we worked with, we got him involved, and then he moved out. He had,
Aged
didn't
out.
be there anymore. And I went back with another kid like years later, and he was still going.
That's awesome.
I ran back into him. So that was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, it gives a lot of hope to a lot of people that need it, including myself, really. I don't think I would have been able to, I mean, I went back to school and got my degree, and I don't think I would have been able to, I think I've done 3 albums since I've been here.
Okay.
Roughly 3 of the albums I put out were while I was living here. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Brandon, so we're supposed to do a video. I think we're talking about doing a video with Brandon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hopefully sometime this year. I don't know. I know he's very busy, but we've been talking about possibly doing a video together. So.
Very cool. Yeah, nice.
I'm very much looking forward to that.
And that's the other cool thing about Rhode Island and the horror scene and like the dark art scene is like, once you get involved, everybody, like, you can just network and with everyone around here. It's crazy. Like there's so many people involved in cool stuff like music, film, social media, podcasting.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's like so many people that you can network with in Rhode Island, and that's like such a great example. There.
I met a really cool girl who's a singer, and she kind of likes the dark folk stuff, and her name's Kate Ford, and she does her own podcast called New England Gothic. That's like, she just tells like she does anything from occult stories to like hauntings, and it's just cool. I'm glad we have such a rich association with that stuff in New England. It's like, it's just right for anyone who loves any of this sort of dark culture stuff.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about like music inspirations.
Sure.
And so when I was listening to your albums, I mentioned to you before we got on air, one of them like really I gravitated more to than not, like I loved them all, but like one I was like, oh man, I really, really was like in this one. And that was Bastard Children. Just the vibe of that album I really loved. And I know earlier you were kind of saying how like that one you kind of shifted away from, but like in there I kind of heard like elements of like Deer Tick, which super local,
sure,
Go-Go Bordello, and then the Growlers, if you're familiar with them. I
don't know the Growlers.
It's the something about like the tone, the raspiness of your voice. It felt like sitting around a campfire with a bunch of like gypsies and pirates is how I would describe it.
Well, it's kind of funny because you say that, because I actually have Romani heritage. My father was part Romani, and his father grew up in a Varda wagon. But so maybe that's probably just in my blood. But the actual like real gypsies. I say Romani because it's
No, I totally but
people don't know.
there, it's So
Yeah.
perfect.
The deer, well, I really love War Elephant, and I think he is obviously a huge Nirvana fan, and I am also a huge Nirvana fan. I think we're the same age, so I imagine he probably had the tapes in a Sony Sport just like I did as a kid. I cannot get that out of my DNA, even if I've tried, but I've embraced it and I've accepted it now. But when I was starting out, I kind of tried to. If people told me I sounded like Nirvana, I was like, but it's fine now. I love Nirvana, but yeah, the first album, I'm a really big fan of Mark Lanigan, especially his early solo material, and my thought process going into that was very much inspired by his first album, The Winding Sheet, um which is kind of like, he's a Seattle guy, the grunge scene, but here he is doing like this sort of bluesy acoustic folky album. And it was like, oh, and also like MTV Unplugged. I mean, yeah. MTV Unplugged showed me as a kid that like these heavy bands could like take acoustic guitars and get stripped down and still be really raw. Mm-hmm. And that's always been sort of my ethic going into what I do with the Sister thing. And we did, and I did do a rock album that was sort of a love letter to that era. This our second album, House of Lightums, which I co-wrote with my friend Alex Garzone, who's working with me now. But yeah, Bastard Children, I feel like it's got a lot of different things going on in that album. There's like some almost Irish sounding songs. There's some like rootsy Americana stuff and some weirder stuff, some punky stuff. I don't know. Each track is very different, I feel like.
Yeah. So for some of your more recent albums, where do you think you've kind of shifted with some of like your influences or inspirations?
Well, yeah, I'm always looking for something fresh to inspire me. I have my favorites. I mean, like I said, Mark Lanigan, Nirvana. I love PG Harvey. I love Rasputina, groups like that. I love a lot of like the Riot Girl stuff, and a lot of women performers are big inspirations to me. And this latest stuff, I mentioned I'm working with a cellist, Isabel Castelvi. And I started exploring new lower tunings. I got a baritone guitar. We're definitely taking cues from a lot of like some sort of post metal stuff, a lot of women fronted post metal like Chelsea Wolfe.
That's kind of who I had in my head when I was listening to that.
I love all that stuff because it's like, it's very hard for me I don't look for new stuff. I mean, I want to find new stuff that excites me. But it's very hard because if it doesn't grab me naturally, I just can't stay focused on it. But like some of these, like Emma Ruth Rundle, who I just seen, I love her album Marked for Death, and Chelsea Wolfe, a number of others, and like it's pretty fresh for me. So because like I always joke that like, oh, I don't know any new music if it's come out after 1997, which isn't true. But yeah, I mean, I also listen to a lot of classical music, a lot of romantic period classical. And movie scores. Good Lord. Hans Zimmer, Danny Elfman. Like, I love film scores.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm kind of going around.
No, it's okay.
We are planning to include like instrumentals on this next one. And I want it to be even darker than what I'm already doing. Like just heavier, darker.
Sure.
I'm hoping it's so I hope it's hopeless when you listen to it.
So your albums have like themes, right? Would you?
Yeah, I've like tried to go for that because I think it's kind of interesting when you give yourself prompts when writing, instead of like just having an album where you're just throwing. I mean, that's pretty much what Bastard Children is. It's just like I'm throwing a bunch of songs I had written over the course of however many years. And it ends up sounding how it does because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I started to kind of give myself a thematic concept for each one. Obviously, Burnt Offerings has a very distinct one. Mortis Nervosa, I'd said earlier, I actually just based it on the Scary Stories books and some fairy tales. Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar. You guys are obviously familiar with Scary Stories.
Scary Stories for sure. Yep. Can you give some examples of the folktales?
So White Satin Evening Gown is one of the stories in the book. Really how it happened was the summer I was starting to write those songs for Morris and Vosa was I was flipping through that book. I have the Treasury with the Stephen Gamble drawings. We all remember. And I was looking at the story titles and I was saying to myself, these sound like cool song titles. And it's always fun to come up with little writing exercises. And one of those is come up with a title first, which you never do. But sometimes it's a good exercise. You come up with a bunch of titles and see if you can write based on the titles. So I did that with a couple, and then then I ended up writing the whole album based. Some of them are just straight up the story, and some of them are just the title. I used the title. It has really nothing to do with the actual story, but like White Satin Evening Gown is pretty much the story, very faithfully adapted into song format. Although I suppose I allude to some more troubling things that possibly happened to the girl. And Rings on Her Fingers. It's the grave robber story, but instead of stealing the rings from her fingers, he falls in love with her. And in my version, she's actually dead. And in the original, if you're not familiar with the story, really quick, the story is that the grave robber, it's an old Victorian tale where they were really scared about being buried alive. Well, this young girl dies supposedly, and she's rich, and the guy goes to rob her jewelry, exhumes her body. The combination of he can't get the rings off, so he gets a knife out that starts to cut off one of her fingers. But that mixed with the air touching her skin wakes her up, and he's so terrified that he knocks his lamp over and he falls over on his own knife and bleeds to death, and she just walks away. So he inadvertently saves her life.
Yeah.
And in my version, he digs her up and he sees this woman and he just falls absolutely in love. And the song format itself is kind of romantic, the way it sounds, and the disgusting thing, but it's And if you're really listening to my lyrics, which most people you're playing in a bar or restaurant, they're not listening to what you're saying. If you're really listening, it's very obvious of what's going on. I just don't make it totally obscene.
It's a little like Poe's Annabelle Lee.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very Poe-like sort of story, and he makes death sound so romantic. So, but all those stories, I mean, they're pretty much what the basis of that whole album is.
So when we had first met at that event at Buttonwoods, you had told me that you had like pretty much like an album with the theme of scary stories, and I was like, this guy is something else right here. So I was like, we're gonna get along fine for sure. And then listening to the music, you're right, it's like, it's this beautiful dark music. So I think people, I think what you're aiming for as far as how you're trying to like get people from this lovers of this genre, I think is spot on, because I think that's kind of what they want dark art. So
I mean, and I think you can do it with a sort of elegance. And I mean, obviously we love Poe, we love Lovecraft, and there's like there's a dark elegance to their work. It's both beautiful and poetic. I mean, it's beautiful and poetic, and then it's also macabre and grotesque. It's like, I mean, if I played in a metal band and I sang a song about a grave robber fucking a dead body, it's pretty, it's pretty par of the course, I think, but which is still awesome. It's like, I kind of love White Zombie because it's so ludicrous, but it's awesome and it's fun music, but it's also about zombies and witches and bullshit. Like the Misfits were like that too. But also the acoustic thing for me is like, I also, because we just did there was a Nirvana tribute night, and I actually partook in, I just sang, and it was awesome. We would just like scream my voice out, but like, I'm 37, man. I don't really want to scream on stage anymore. I haven't wanted to do that in a while. And with the acoustic guitar, it's like, I'm making a living doing this now. And it's like, this is actually our second year of doing this full time. I would just take jobs and whatever before, but like, it's economical. I bring an acoustic guitar, I can plop down anywhere and play my tunes for 3 hours. And it's like, they're not always the most inspiring performances, but you know what? They're paying my bills. So, and I'm very grateful to be able to do that. Like, It's really hard to have like a 4 or 5 piece band where you need a PA, you have a drum kit. I mean, you need so much more gear. And then to travel around like that, it's tough. you know, and people don't want to do that the older they get. It's like, okay, how much money are we making? It's like, you don't have the Four Musketeers kind of approach that you did at 17. So I'm just lucky that I've had Diane with me for this long.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question about the music scene in Rhode Island. Like, what part of it, or where is it thriving, and what part of it needs improving, or what would you do to make improvement in the music scene in Rhode Island if you could?
More free shows, honestly. I've been talking about this a lot. I don't think the model of having a covered show, I mean, I get it, but at the same time, I wish music venues had more free nights where you could just see bands and not have to commit. I'd be more apt to go. I mean, I just can't afford to drop like 15-20 bucks every night to go. Like, I'd love to see more shows, but that often stops me. But I wish it was a little less segregated. I don't mean racially. I mean, like, although you could prove that too, but genre wise, I don't see any reason why you can't have mixed genres. Some people try to do it, I think, but it seems like the genres get really segregated, and I really wish they would. I don't know what to do about that, but like, I really wish there were more shows where like you could see a metal band with, like, I don't know, folk act, a blues act, whatever, and hip hop act all in one show. I don't see why you can't do that, but
I think that's something that we've kind of been throwing out wanting to do.
We've been trying
like, people are weirdly, they're just too comfortable, and they like, there's, every venue has like a culture, like, not necessarily like nobody hates each other, but it's like, if you're part of the culture that goes to this venue and that venue, those are the only two venues you'll see those people at. And then those people won't go to this venue. The people that go to the, it's like, and honestly, it's funny because as an artist, it's like, you could probably play the same city at these 3 different venues all week, and you wouldn't run the risk of saturating it, because the same people are not going to go see you at these different venues.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear people say, oh, it's there. Oh, I don't go there. But yeah, I don't know. But it's always thriving, and it's always not thriving. It's like, there's always like a handful of bands that seem to be doing well, and they're like the hot new thing, and then it changes, and that's normal. I feel like there are less live music venues, and obviously COVID has had a lot to do with that. Yeah, like, I'm really bummed that Foo Fest isn't happening, and it hasn't happened in a while. But I don't know. I don't want to be like negative, so I don't want to like.
No, it's all right.
There's great things happening, and I've just been very happy that when Diane and I have been able to make a modest living, but we're doing it full time. So, and that's been a huge difference for me and my sanity.
Now, speaking of venues, what have been some of your favorite places to perform?
I really actually like what I used to kind of knock them because I didn't really like the location, and there's been so many different venues there, is askew. But I really had a great time playing our show in December, and they've done a great job with it. It's very comfortable in there. They have espresso. That's a big deal for me. I wish more bars had fucking coffee late at night. I mean, good coffee. The Columbus is always great. That's been one of my favorite places. I love Dusk, especially for heavier shows. Like, if I'm going to do a rock show, I'd absolutely do it at Dusk. But like, we're trying to like make this sustainable. So sometimes like the music venues aren't necessarily the most sustainable ways of playing a show for us. But Askew is definitely up there, and Dusk.
Okay. Cool.
Used to love Aurora, but unfortunately that's gone.
And also, you have an upcoming show in Europe. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're doing a tour. I'm doing a tour. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Doing a little solo tour. Hopefully next time it won't be solo, but I'm gonna be in Paris for 2 weeks playing shows in and out of Paris, around Paris, and then I'm going to be in Spain and Italy.
Okay.
So I'm with a young songwriter that really likes my music and found me from last year. I played their one show, Lisa Hartman, and she's hooked me up with a bunch of shows in Paris, and then I kind of like found some other musicians to play with as well, and I don't know, just working hard to make it happen, and it's very DIY. But
Yeah.
I have a friend who lives out there, so that's kind of helpful.
Hmm.
But
Return, what can we expect from Voodoo Sister? What's next for you guys?
well, I said earlier, we're working on brand new songs that I'm very excited about. We've been incorporating them into our sets, our live sets recently. We're finishing up new songs for a 5th album with our new cellist, Isabel. Playing some gigs with my good buddy Dan White, who's kind of a local legend. We're doing a show at the Stomping Ground in Putnam, which is a weird little town, quirky and quaint, on Thursday. But otherwise, we have some festivals we're working on. We're going to be at Providence. We might be at Providence Festival. Actually, we were there last year. I don't know what's going on with that Providence Festival. Anyways, yeah, biggest thing this year for me is obviously Europe, but also the 5th album that we're working on.
Awesome. Well, we are very excited for that. But also I'm just super excited for the event that we're going to do together. So would you just reiterate to everybody the date, the time, and where to get
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of Askew, I talked them up. So at Askew in Providence, it'll be May 26th. And yeah, that's going to be very exciting.
It's a Saturday, right?
It is. No, it's a
Sunday?
Friday. I think it's Friday. I don't know.
I should probably figure that out.
May 26th. I got a calendar right in front of me.
There you go.
It's it's a Friday.
There you go.
It's a Friday. Awesome.
Friday.
Yes. All right. Friday, the 26th. We will be there with Voodoo Sister playing along with other great bands. It's going to be a hell of a time. Definitely
cool stuff to buy. Tarot readers, burlesque dancing, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Going to be nuts.
Can't wait.
You know.
Keith,
All right.
thank you for joining us tonight. This was
Thanks for having me.
fun. Yeah, I appreciate it. Hopefully we see you very soon, but if we don't get to see you before you leave for Europe, good luck, and we'll see you when you get back, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yep. No problem. Everybody, thank you for listening. Check out the event, check out Voodoo Sister, listen to all the albums. Have a great night.